All right, all right. Hello, everyone. Today, a special episode. It's an hour later than usual because all three guests are actually in North America. So it's actually, 2000 would be
USA,
that little bit
US.
too early for the working folks like Seddow and Progot.
Some of us are still working.
So and then it's a little late for Miranda, so she's not here because she always has to get up so early. She's like super tired. And I couldn't move it to tomorrow because I'm actually going to be at Miranda's place tomorrow, and then it's we're not gonna have the ability there. So I got us a little bit of an interesting mix today. Obviously, I think most people are aware of who you guys are, but for that one guy that might be in chat that doesn't, I'm gonna give you guys like a super short introduction. All right. So we've got Brisc, the Destroyer of the Red Dot. Super, like that's maybe your biggest achievement ever, right?
Probably,
Yeah.
I would say.
And then after that, like maybe his son and like getting married and stuff.
Being married and having a job and stuff. But I fixed the red dot, so
yeah.
Mic drop.
A good friend of mine, obviously, also an Init, and CSM rep of my heart, right? Has represented me like pretty well the last 3 years. Yes, there was that 1 year where you set out, but I think you were still in contact with people, and people still ask you for advice and stuff. So
I got you banned, so I'm cool because nobody else has done that.
That's true. Oh. That's quite an achievement too. Then we've got progodlegend. I'd say a legendary FC in the game. Has been around for, I don't even know, might be decades at this point. Like how old is Eve?
14 years now, actually.
So 14 years, has been FCing for probably all 14 years. Has been on at least 3 times, as if I remember correctly, at least 3 times before.
Yeah. Okay, at least,
times, right?
2, I think. But
you have been
at least
on
2
times.
Yeah.
So
CSM 8 and 9.
No. Wait a second. He has been on the CSM twice, but he has been on here before. That's what I meant.
Well, he's been on the show before.
Yeah.
I thought you meant the CSM before.
All right.
I've only been on the show once. This is exciting.
Well, you're not an FC, so you're a little bit of an exception, right?
I FC'd one move up in Fountain for like half an hour.
Then, you're officially an FC then.
I was even in a monitor.
The last 2 times, I think we talked to you and Killer Bee, right? I don't know, before the war and then during the war, and then probably we're gonna have another one of those episodes after the war, if that war ever ends, right? That's another topic. I don't know if we should talk about that one. I don't know. Is this war ever gonna end? We would see.
What are you drinking? Is that a Bitburger?
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
My second favorite.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's all right. And then
if you're drinking, I'm drinking. We'll get a beer.
Our third guest, Seddow, who couldn't make it who told me he would make it a little late, but then didn't, because it was his 21st birthday. So,
Yes.
I forgive you, right?
And then, working a 9-to-5 job and a bunch of other stuff.
Well, yeah, it all adds up.
I guess. I delayed you so much.
What did you do for your 21st birthday, Seddow?
So the weekend before, I actually was in New Orleans with my fraternity brothers, and that was our final formal. So I sort of celebrated it there. But then the actual weekend of my birthday, we basically just went out on our boat, had a good time, went to a beach, drank a lot, and then went to bars throughout the night.
Which fraternity?
What'd you say?
Which fraternity are you in?
I don't want to say that.
Oh, come on! I'm a Lambda Chi Alpha. Hopefully you're not a... If you're
Really?
Lambda Chi Alpha, I would like to know.
I'm not Lambda Chi.
Okay, all right. All right, there you go. Those were our big rivals, so nice.
At my school, you guys are big rivals too.
We don't even have fraternities over here. maybe we do have like super rarely there's some, maybe. I don't know.
You gotta have something. I mean, how else are you going to get drunk in college, right? I mean,
Well,
you
we're
know,
German,
thing.
dude. We're German, all right?
Well,
We
that's true.
find
You're gonna
ways to
do
get
it.
drunk in college, trust me.
You're gonna do it anyway.
Yeah. there's always going to be a reason to. So, for those who wonder who Seddow is, he is the main FC and probably like spiritual leader of Dreadbomb. He used to FC in test together with Progod, but you're kind of building your own little group, right? And I think you're getting there. So just for those who wonder. And then obviously the reason we've got all three on today is they're all running for CSM, which I think the election starts Tuesday, right? Is it probably
That is
right
correct.
right after downtime, I'm guessing?
There's usually always some issue with the website, so expect that it'll start sometime on Tuesday, whether or not it's right after downtime or whenever the website decides to start working. But yeah, it's supposed to be the June 8th to the 15th.
Yep. And so the first question that I always wonder is, like, why or what makes you run for CSM, right? So why do you do that to yourselves?
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, like I think it is, especially for example.
Are we masochist? Discuss.
Yeah, I mean, Progod, you can talk to like CSM, of course, but also CCP guys. They would probably listen. I mean, let's say they would listen just as much as if you were CSM in most cases, right? So what makes you run, right?
I mean, Brisc, you've been going a couple years in a row. You want to take that? Or you want me to hit it?
If you want to go ahead, I'd like to hear why you're running, and then I'll tell everybody. For me, it's more because this is what I do. But
yeah, I mean, I think it's like I was on 8 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, and obviously it's been a big gap, and all of a sudden I decided to put an application in at the last minute for this one, and it's obviously I stopped running after CSM 9 because 2 years in a row and some of the stuff that went down in CSM 9, I just was not motivated to do it, and yeah, I thought about running a couple years. Villy was obviously the test candidate, and I'm happy with Villy. He and I are obviously both FCs, and we see eye to eye on things, and disagree on some things, but I generally trust his knowledge of the game and his outlook on the game, and feel like my demographic is being represented by Villy as far as block FCs go. But I think what motivated me to run this year is win or lose this war. We just had, assuming this ends at some point, we've had now for the past 10 months the biggest war in EVE history, and I think it's important for the people who were involved at the top level, planning this war, running this war, to get in there and tell CCP as much as possible about it, because I fear that they are not getting enough of that message, because we now have, it's really hard to get a lot of data or a lot of real uh, experiences or examples of how these game mechanics work at the fringe scale, the edge cases, and now we've gotten quite a lot of it, and you know, I want to get on there and lend my opinion. If Asher had run and Darkshides had run and you had run Pando, like honestly, the more big FCs on both sides that could have run this year, the better. So that's why I just decided, you know what, I'm going to run this year, because this year I actually have something that I feel like CCP needs to know about. I actually like a lot of how the new game mechanics have worked, but there's definitely some pain points that need to be addressed. And if I don't know if I'll be able to have any impact, or if any of us will be able to have any impact with any of this stuff, but it can't hurt to be there, giving a voice, saying, I was there, I was in the FC meetings where we talked about why this would work and why that wouldn't work, and here's how the game mechanics are affecting those decisions that ultimately create content for everyone. So that's why I wanted to get on this year.
All right. So did you actually go last minute, or was it also a little bit of tactics?
I put my no. I snapped decision. I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. It was literally 4 hours before the deadline, and I missed that the forum post was supposed to be like formatted a certain way and answer like certain questions. I just didn't know about it. I was running through it too quickly, and CCP guy messaged me in the morning and he's like, "Hey, I saw your app. If you can edit your forum post and actually make it good in the next few hours, I'll let you go." And I stopped what I was doing. I was like, "My bad." And I wrote a proper post.
Well, I think it's a good move from the CCP to the they saw you
that's
had
a new
the
thing
deadline,
because my second term, I wrote a forum post because I was one of the N3 candidates. I was going to get in, so I wrote a forum post. I was like, "Hi, I'm running again. See ya."
That's what
thanks.
Killer Bee did that one year too.
Yeah.
He just said like, "Oh yeah, I
Eric
see."
the same thing. Aerith would write something like this, like, "I'm going to be on the CSM again. There's nothing you can do about it. So just pod yourself over and over again until it doesn't work."
I mean, it's a little douchey, but no, I put some effort into that post. It's on the forums right now.
All right. I thought at first like, oh, Piggle's being all strategic from the start here.
No strategy at all. Come on, man. You think I have a strategic bone in my body after all this war? Come on, talk some shit.
So why am I running again?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, you guys have heard the story, I think, of how I started running for CSM. It was a joke. It was supposed to be funny. But then I got elected, and then my whole take is, once you get elected, you got a responsibility, you got to do the job. So I busted my ass. I worked really hard on CSM 13. Obviously, the incident happened, and I didn't get to finish that term. And 14 ran around, and then I looked and I saw what was going on in the game, and I saw Blackout, and I saw the stuff that was being put out and put forward, and I had some concerns about it. And I said, you know what, I'm going to run again, and we'll see if we can make this happen. And I'll be honest, I'll be bluntly honest. I enjoy campaigning. I enjoy this time period. I have a lot of fun with it. I go out there, I make funny videos, I do the memes, I go on all the shows. This is fun for me, and it's one of the things that I'm good at. I mean, look, ProGod is great at the game. He's a great FC. Seddow's a great FC. I am a mediocre line member. I show up. I press F2, F1. I try to align properly, but God knows Shines and you are yelling at me constantly to make sure I'm paying attention. So I'm not going to argue that I'm like the best EVE player ever, but I like it and I have fun and I enjoy what I'm doing and I have fun hanging out with my friends. But what I am good at is the stuff that the CSM does that makes the game better, that helps CCP, that also stops them from doing stupid things. And that's the ability to go in, to do the work, to put in the time, to present good arguments, to talk to people, to get feedback, to filter out stuff that's good from stuff that's bad, and knowing how to push the levers of soft power, if you will, because we don't have any decision-making capability. We don't get to decide this is where they're going to put money or this is what they're going to work on. At best, we have to be persuasive. And if we can convince the right people that do make those decisions that this is a good idea, then we can get something done. I'm pretty good at that. It's what I do for a living. And if I can convince these guys in DC to do this stuff, I should be able to convince the guys in Reykjavik to do some things. And we have demonstrated that we can do that. I mean, that I spent a year working on the red dot stuff along with the other CSM members. We got that done. We spent a long time working on a variety of issues that I think have been long stagnant in the game. I think the fact that they're finally doing something about AFK Cloaky camping is because we put the work in to convince them it needed to get done. All the balance changes, even getting them to focus on balance changes the way that they do, even though I know that there are plenty of those changes that we can debate left and right about, just getting them to do that kind of work is important. And then I think from a fundamental perspective, when it comes down to it, you need good people to run. And if you don't have good people to run, or people are running for the wrong reasons and they get in there and they don't do anything, that's a wasted seat. Or if they get in there and they genuinely do bad stuff, as we have seen, that's also a wasted seat. So I'm kind of trying to do this because I feel like after 2 times doing it, I kind of know what I'm doing. And I like to be the guy that's out front and trying to be a player advocate. I also go out and do all the shows, and I talk to people, and I respond to emails, and I try to at least demonstrate to the players that there are people on the CSM that are willing to put the time in to listen to them and pass on the stuff that they're concerned about, even if they don't happen to be in it or happen to be in the Imperium or even happen to be a nullsec guy. So that's why I'm doing it, and I have fun with it. If I wasn't having fun, I wouldn't do it.
You know, we talked about it like shortly before we went live. I remember when you first decided to run. Like I knew you. We hang out in comms every now and then, but we weren't like super close at the time or anything. And then you were like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna run for CSM. It's gonna be fun and stuff, right?" And I'm like, "All right, well, you go do you." Right? But then I saw you did actually put in the work. Right? You did actually go out, like honestly, like campaigned properly and all that stuff. I was like, "All right, we do have a candidate here, right?" And there have been other candidates before. Also in it, they just.
Did you think Brisc wasn't going to put in the work?
At the time, I
Chris,
didn't.
did you hear
I
that?
didn't know him well.
No,
At the time,
some
that was like
politician asshole. What's he gonna do?
like how many years ago? I don't even want to.
I guess
4
about
years
3
or
years
something.
ago now.
Yeah.
3 years ago now.
This is your last year, right, Brisc? Because of that new rule?
No, I can do one more after this. So the
Okay.
way that the term limits work, it's 3 years in a row. So last year, this year, and then next year, if I run again, would be my 3, and then I got to take a break.
Do you think it makes sense, that rule?
Yeah, I think it does. Oh, sorry.
I'm of two minds on it. I think the idea that giving the guys letting them take a break is okay, is fine. I think people should be willing to do that. At the same time, at least I find that the longer you serve, the more effective you are, because people get to know you, players get to know you, but also the CCP developers get to know you, and you figure out where the bathrooms are. You can go out and have a conversation with these guys. You understand the way the company works better. There's a lot of getting up to speed stuff. Like if Seddow gets elected, there's a lot of getting up to speed stuff he's going to have to deal with that, ProGod and I are not, because we've been there before. And I think this year especially sucked. I feel bad for Torvald and for Phantomite and for Kenneth, because they had never gotten a chance to go to Iceland, go to see these guys, get to know them in person. Mike Azarai had served before, so he wasn't new. So he'd been there. And then the rest of us had either been there before or were incumbents that got reelected. So we had been there. We knew what was going on. But it was really hard for those guys. And I feel like they missed out on a good chunk of the experience, because part of the fun is actually getting to go there and sit there and talk and be in a professional environment and seeing the offices and getting to really get to know these guys on a personal level, so that when you go and you talk to them, you're more than just a face on a screen. They didn't get that opportunity. It kind of sucks.
Yeah. So
Well, not just the experience though, but the summit is clearly, at least from when I was on, maybe it's changed, but the summit was when we got by far the most work done, or we had the most impact with the actual changes that went in the game.
100%.
So I did think about that the other day. The fact that you guys didn't have a summit this term probably hurt all of us in Eve, not just you guys as well.
but maybe
I agree 100%.
maybe so, and you can tell me if that's the case. An optimistic me would say, because there was no summit, the focus was more on like Zoom meetings and all that stuff, and maybe that stuff just got way better. So now the next term, it's better without the summit, but you get a summit on top of it, So maybe it's actually a long-term improvement.
Yeah,
That's fair. I think that's fair.
I mean, Briss, I don't know how you feel about it. Personally, I am not a massive fan of this whole work from home boom that came with the pandemic. I think there's really no substitute for getting everyone in a room with a whiteboard and some markers and being able to draw it out. So yeah, I mean, yeah, well, it's a good thing. You're right that they probably developed some new best practices with these weekly meetings and Zoom meetings, but there's still no substitute for the summit.
I agree 100%. I mean, look, I don't mind the work from home stuff, because I get 2 extra hours of work that I'm not sitting in a fucking car. But at the end of the day, I don't get a chance to go out and see people. I don't get a chance to sit them and have a quiet, whispered conversation in a corner that we normally would do. Now, and the same thing on the CSM, we can't take Rise and Cognac out to dinner, or take them out to the bar afterwards and get drunk and have a good time. And then the next day, all the stuff we talked about, well, we thought about that some more, and that's a good point, and we're going to do this, that, and the other thing. So that's the type of stuff. As much as the summit is done in the room, with the whiteboard, there's a lot of stuff that's done on the side, and that's business anywhere. I mean, you go to, like, for example, businessmen that go to conventions, you go to the convention, you do a ton of work outside of whatever you're there for the convention for. You're meeting clients, you're cutting deals, you're seeing what the opponents are doing, all of that kind of stuff. For the CSM, it's the same. You go to see the devs where they can let their hair down, they can get to know you in a private way that's not in front of 1,000 people, and it's not, it's not with the pressure of their bosses sitting in the same room listening to them, and they know what you've told them and what they're telling you, and it's a lot easier that way. So I find going to Iceland. Now, frankly, I would rather not have to do that. I wish we could go somewhere fun. Like, if we could just do the CSM Summit in Vegas, that would be great. Can we do that? Or
Maybe
let's go to New
they should
Orleans and do it
rotate
then.
But then you don't have access.
Are you coming to Eve New Orleans, Brisc?
I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. I got to figure out the travel schedule. I mean, and granted, although, look, August, you guys had to pick August. How does balls in August?
Don't get me started. Don't even get me started. But there's a lot of events in New Orleans, and they wanted to do it this year. I was for pushing it to 2022 and just sucking it up and not having it this year. But they
was supposed
were
to go
eager to get it
last
done.
year.
Yeah,
I had a room in May. I had everything ready to go. I was going to go to New Orleans. I would like to go.
So they would have done. They would have done it a little later, but New Orleans actually. I'm trying to get down there for October. So New Orleans did something where they took all the festivals that were canceled from COVID. So Jazz Fest, Voodoo, Buku, French Quarter Fest, all this stuff, and they stacked them all in October. So for 5 weekends in a row in October, you've got French Quarter Fest, both weekends of Jazz Fest, Buku, and then Voodoo. So there's just no way to do it in the fall this year. So they kind of got stuck in August.
If the CSM meeting wasn't in Iceland, though, you wouldn't have access to all the devs, right? That would
That's
be
true. It'd just
weird.
be the ones that they brought.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and it's gonna be like
not you have access all of them.
Rise and Signal, and then 2 others that you talk to like all the time anyway. I think at least, right?
That's the thing. Like some of the devs that I like the most are guys that you almost never see on the shows. Like CCP Cognac is one of my boys. I love that guy. He is huge. He is the biggest bear of a man you have ever seen. He makes me look small, and I am not a small person.
I can attest to that.
You guys can attest. You both met me in real life. So it's like, this guy is huge, and he's cool. He's fun to hang out with, and we sit there and talk. And I mean, his goal in life is to get a boat and sail the Mediterranean, with his shirt off. And I love that guy. But I'd never see him. It's the only thing I've only ever seen him do one event. He went to Eve of Russia, I think, and that was it. He doesn't go to the other stuff, so I wouldn't see him if we didn't go to Iceland.
All right.
So you're right.
Then, how about Seddow? Seddow, you have been so quiet.
I don't think he can hear us. I think he's got. I think he's getting dread bombed.
Is he? Is he actually gone?
Yeah,
I think he's getting fought.
Dude, like, I can't like. I already told him it's not a secret. I'm like, dude, how are you gonna get elected, right? Like, you can't even make it. Yeah. It's just Seddow things, I guess. But at the same time, at least this time, if it's a fight and he's getting dread bombed, at least it's a good excuse. But yeah,
exactly. He's got work to do. He's got fights to take.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, he'll pop back and say hi to us.
Hey, he's out there campaigning right now in force.
Right, in game, unlike us, right?
Yeah,
that would be something.
He's knocking on doors, Brisc.
That is exactly right. That is perfectly fair. You should be doing that.
Yeah, you should be getting elected by Ezekiel stats, right? That reminds me of something, actually. So there was a stream earlier from Dr. Spodumane, and they were rating all kinds of ideas, right? Like the S tier is the biggest, then A, B, C, D, whatever, right? And on the top there was remove Ezekiel. And I was like,
I've heard this before.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic.
Crazy.
But so that always reminds me of something that I would like to see, actually, is not remove Ezekiel or whatever, but give people the option to be anonymous, right? So you could just say, I'm anonymous. If you get killed, everyone can see who it was, right? But if you kill something, then, whatever.
Which version of this argument is? Because I've heard 2 versions. I've heard the one that Ezekiel gives too much intel, which is something which is something that it can be legitimately debated. And then I've heard an older one that's been around for a while that is basically, if you remove the scoreboard from EVE Online, people won't know they're losing and they'll just focus on having fun, which is just total bullshit.
It's
But
complete bullshit.
yeah,
That's absolute bullshit.
trust me, you
But
know when you're losing, you feel it.
not
The
only
thing
that,
is,
it's like
though,
I like to measure my dick against the other guys. I mean, we do all kinds of stuff
Yeah,
for fun.
yeah.
We do damage races and who can get top damage, who can get final blow, billionist to whoever gets the final blow. I mean, stuff like that. You can't do that if there's no way to track it. Like,
So
I'm still pissed off that last Asbel we killed. I brought my Zernitra out. I was doing like 69,000 damage, and I wanted to see how much damage I did. And the kill mail never generated because we had too many people on.
So you can
That sucks. Like, didn't happen.
argue that Zkill gives too much intel, kind of like how, I guess like if you're playing online chess and they got some stats on you, they can look up all your chess games and run it through a tool and see how your opening moves and stuff and how often you do them. That how would you fix that though? So because yeah, you can go to Zkill devs and be like, hey, can y'all just like show that day's kills and then get rid of them after that? But that API endpoint is still there. So, well, I guess if you didn't have people's APIs, I don't know. That just seems like
The main argument
if
that
it's
I've
that much of
heard,
a problem, maybe, but that's tough to
I don't
do.
think it's I think it's less of a problem for most people. I think it's really only a problem if you are a small gang guy who is going hunting a lot and you're not using an ult. But I think in that regard, I mean, the thing I've heard that these guys also suggest is, well, let's just delay kill mails by an hour, delay them by half an hour, 45 minutes, and then you can still get to see it, but you don't get the instant intel. But
I
even
think
then,
I would
I mean,
like
that's
that.
How are we going to keep track of our 3D slugfest in real time?
right? Exactly. I
Do
gotta
we
know.
have to,
You
though?
guys got to know how much you're losing so you can
All right,
pull out
I
before you
know,
lose the
right?
score, right?
Yeah.
I'm back now. Sorry, Pando.
What happened?
Fuck that.
Tell us what happened.
I had like 30 nightmares, and 40 max appeared, and they ended up not fighting me, and it was sad.
So you didn't even
Lot
get
of-
a fight?
gating-
You
lot of
left
gating around in
us and you didn't even get a
Okay.
fight?
I was about to be dropped on, and I was like, I had to be focused, and then they never dropped, and I was like, okay, well,
Hey.
crap.
This is Eve. Everyone is about to get dropped on
Fine.
all the time. Right.
But I am here permanently.
Alrighty.
So then-
You want to answer that first question? Like, why are you even running?
I'm running because I think I can offer a unique perspective. Being in Wrecking Crew, it's like we have dudes who live in Pochvin, we have dudes that live in Nullsec, we have dudes that live in Lowsec all across Coalition, we have dudes that do faction warfare, dudes who live in NPC, and I hear a lot of complaints, and after leaving Test and building up my own corp and building up my own alliance at this point, I've run into a lot of issues and things that I think would be good additions or changes to the game, and it sort of changed my perspective after building up an alliance on how the game is played, mechanics and how they are implemented in the game, and how you think about them as an alliance leader in FC. I feel like I had a really good perspective on the military side of things after leaving Test and Legacy, after being there for 2.5, 3 years FCing and fighting. But I got a whole new perspective on the game as an alliance leader after trying, and a coalition director for Wrecking Crew after taking the step to build my own community and group.
Yeah, not as easy as you thought, huh?
Oh, not as easy at all. Very time, and these game mechanics don't make it any easier.
No.
What game mechanics exactly?
Well, I mean, I can't really at the time. Well, the way, if you think about it, the main income source for alliances is from moons, or for big groups' case, the TTT. So when you
You
start
don't
a new
get
group,
any TTT money?
The TTT is not a main income source. The TTT is there to provide capsuleers a peace of mind.
Oh
when they
my
go
God.
shopping.
okay.
Stop it, please. The
It
TTT
a
is fucking
service.
disgusting.
We are
That's
in
what
a
it
service
is.
industry.
Is a service that probably funds more than 50% of your war. So, but
Of
I think
everyone's war.
I
That's
think
the
that
fucking
smaller, like, if you think about it, like the way jump bridges are set up, people can be across the map in minutes. So as a smaller group, if you're trying to take a small group of space from a bigger coalition, or just to get access to maybe some moons or something like that, some sort of like alliance level income, then the jump bridges sort of disallow that because big group or a big blob can sort of cross 5 regions, 6 regions, and I don't know, 10 jumps or less to stop you. I think that the new AI and ESSs, I think you could use ESS as a way to build alliance income through like alliance roaming fleets. But and I get that if you were to add something to the games, null blocks would just scale it up and use it as their own income source. But I think that maybe some if there was a way to rework Pochvin or Losec or faction warfare into having smaller objectives for these smaller alliances to go into. Well, I had talked to Astrossi last night, and if you were to add the new AI that's used in these new sites to faction warfare and gave them a sort of incursion style feel, or if you changed incursions to be like with this new AI that they implemented in these new sites, I think it'd be a great idea for smaller groups to sort of use that as a way to get their own income. But that's not the main thing. A lot of it is just um, I couldn't really say like what change like if I was to make a change tomorrow to the game, what would benefit it. But I think there's a lot of stuff that smaller groups like Pro Guys said, it's not easy to build your own community,
I gotta
and
move for 5 minutes, guys. I'll be right back.
it's not easy to build your own community. And I think that Eve should be a place where there's a lot of communities inside of it and that are built up from all different angles and groups. And the way the game's set up, I think it pushes people to join a null block instead of maybe pushing them to like try something smaller or do their own thing. And I get some people stay in high sec, but if you're like, oh, I want to go to null sec or oh, I want to get in on fleet fights or stuff like that, um, and I get the attraction to nullsec, but if someone goes, "Oh, I want to join a community or a alliance or corp, but I don't want to join a big one," you can't really join a smaller one if you're not set up with your own personal income source in the game already, like
Yeah.
wormholes.
So one thing that always comes up, I think Phantomite pushes for that too, is like passive income, like passive moons.
The thing with passive moons is, as much as I'd love them to come back and like maybe make low sec or NPC null sec passive moons, they would just be hemorrhaged up by the big groups. You have to there's no real way to like break apart big groups, and big groups are not really like an issue. But if you were to make passive moons a thing again, then I think you just run into the same problem.
So I think I
Well,
agree.
if I can pop in on what Seddow's saying, I think that's important because I think the problem with passive income is it scales, and the big guys are always going to want it. What I have suggested, and I know that Phantomite and Gabas in particular, and you'd be surprised, Gabas is a huge fan of passive income. He loves to talk about passive income. Well, what I've suggested, what we've all tried to do is come up with something that generates enough income for a small or medium-sized group, but not so much that a big group would want it, and it's not scalable, so the big groups can't use their N+1 in order to make it more valuable.
Then
I don't know how you do that, but I'm sure CCP can figure it out.
that would be such a hard thing to implement, though, because then you run into the markets fluctuate, so just enough income can vary day to day.
So what I'm thinking, obviously, so first of all, I don't think it's a bad idea to have passive moons, but passive moons on the current like Athenos, like that's a no-go, right? Because like
passive moons with pauses would be great, amazing,
Yeah, well, yeah. I would prefer that.
Content generators.
Yeah, like for example, like the reason why I say like it doesn't have to be pauses, but if you do like for example the timer mechanics with pauses were just so much more fitting to passive moons, right? Now imagine you only have that one timer and it's a strong timer, and it can get hit any time. So big groups, let's say goons or horde or whoever, is kind of breaching out, and let's say passive moons are only low sec. Right, where like smaller groups would probably start out, kind of, right? Holding passive moons then, if it's only one timer and it's a strong timer, against a smaller group that's fairly capable, right? I think that's so much work that most big groups would say like, that's not worth it. It really isn't. Because especially
every night for a fight.
Especially if you look back at fights that we had over posses, ISK-wise, they didn't make any sense. For F7C is a good example. Like super old fight, most people are probably not aware of that fight. But Shines actually lost his Titan there. But we killed so much shit there that like, the battle report was kind of even at the end. There was like 350 bill on both sides died.
Oh,
And it was
R64.
It was an R64 in Cloud Ring. Nobody lives in Cloud Ring, right? And in the end, everyone was like, yeah, well, nobody really cared too much. It wasn't really the moon itself, right? And like from a ISK perspective, it totally didn't make any sense, right? So people would like be careful to do these mistakes. I think those fights are the exception, and they just happen because both sides like want to fucking brawl it out. But long term, investing in it to make money, I don't think that would be big group kind of stuff.
I mean, that's part of the problem is that the investment cost in the end, if it's not enough to generate, a response, if you say who cares, just kill it, then you're not going to cause any fights. But I mean, one of the things that I'd suggest, real quick, so I don't let you go. One of the things that I'd suggest was make Athenors when they're doing the moon pull, let them mine a bit of that ore, make it passive, stick it in an ore hold. And then if the thing gets destroyed, let that drop as loot and you can scoop it up like a core or something like that. And otherwise, when the pull is done, then whoever gets it can just transfer it over. That way there is some passive stuff there. And it does create a little bit of a loot incentive to go kill the thing if you want to get some of the ore. That's the only way that I could think of that would use existing mechanics that might even make sense. But even then, I don't know how much you would be able to get to make it attractive enough for somebody to care about that. Yeah. So that's my take.
It is tricky, right? I'm not saying like if passive moons become a thing, and that's also a thing. Like in the past, people have been asking for certain things. I don't know, like what's a good example? Maybe Blackout is a good example, right? People have been saying like, hey, let's remove local, or let's change local. I remember making a Reddit post like ages ago. Local was included. I did not say remove local. I said like there needs to be like changes need to be done to local chat, right? And then they go and do local chat changes, but it's different, right? It's not really what people. I mean, certainly people have asked for that, but just as an example, right? It's like it's in the details really with these kind of things. Like if they just go out and say, okay, you can now passive moon with an Athanor, and they make no changes other than that, that would be horrible, right? So
it'd be good for scarcity ending, but you're right. I mean, it would have to get balanced. I mean, look, abuse CRX in the chat has a good point. I mean, it's something that we brought up in terms of Blackout, talking about Blackout. What I've said before is how about we set it up so that local is always delayed by like 15, 20 seconds. You can add an iHub upgrade in your system that takes one of those slots, which means you can't add something else, but that lets you get instant local. So then that gives you a reason to hold the iHub, gives you a reason to have the space, especially if it's ratting space. But if you do that, you're not going to be able to put like the extra anomaly generator or something in the iHub thing. So in the end, you got to pick which you want. Do you want more anomalies or do you want better intel? Pick which one is better for you. And that gives agency and it creates choice. That's how I would like to do it. But that would require them going back through and changing a whole bunch of shit. And getting the development time to do that is not always easy when that's not something that they're working on.
So that's what I thought when first the rumors came up about like, there's a structure on like Hobo Leagues called observatories. That's what I thought. Observatories, okay, that might just be a structure that enables local to a degree or has influence in some way, right? And then maybe smaller gangs would be going out to fight over them. That's what I'm always hoping, right? That people would be.
What if local was like a direct 30-second delay? I like Brisc's idea, a 30-second delay, and then you can either do more sites or better intel, or you could do no jammer or better intel. So you can't jam your system, but you could make that 30 seconds down to like 10.
Make that or a real choice. Absolutely. I mean, I've also said the other thing I've suggested is how about a module, a special kind of cloak that cloaks you from local, but doesn't cloak you from the overview or in the game. So they can't tell that you came in the system, but you're still viewable on the grid. You land on the grid, you're there. You're not cloaked. They can target you. They just don't see your name in local for hunting. I think that would be kind of cool for tacklers. That would provide a little bit of a heads up there.
Maybe
I think that would
be
interesting too.
And
for bombers too.
back to the Athenors, I personally think that any structure under an Asbel should only have 2 timers. I don't think that they should have a 3-timer system because 7 days to kill an Astros is a little.
And I'm not gonna go on my Citadel rant, but that's exactly what I think. Right? Staging citadels that are designed to stage from. Let's say Astros is for super small groups, and Fortizars for like medium size, and Keeps is for the big guys. Yeah,
I wish we could hear what Pickles is saying on this call because he is very into it.
Yeah,
He was
maybe,
like hand
maybe I
motioning
should actually.
everything.
I thought about hiding his camera, but I guess I must.
No, this is too good. I want to watch it.
I'm getting distracted.
Scarcity. I think scarcity needs to end. I think that how much they like indie changes fucked faction battleships was a little. I think that they could be reduced some because like Nightmare BPCs are down to like 200 mil because no one's building them. Same with like Macarial BPCs and stuff. I think that they need to be reduced a little bit too.
To be fair, nobody's building much of anything. At least Battleship
Well,
up
that's true.
on up, which is a shame. Like I still don't know anybody who's building capitals. Why would you not? Guys, Pro Guy's on a work call, so he's taking a little bit of break. He'll be back on to talk when he's done. So he told us that was a potential thing. So.
From the indie people I've talked to, and I don't understand industry
just
best, but like I have a general knowledge on the like industry, but I don't understand it the best. People probably, from what people have told me and from what I've heard, no one's gonna start building these caps until the price gets over like 12 bill because for them right now the investment like to build them is just not worth it.
Yeah,
and I
that's
think
my
the fact
understanding
that
too.
Isn't it?
I mean, look, the
like,
carrier prices right now, you're still seeing carriers being sold for 4 billion isk. Just the materials
people are
alone
still
is like
running
10
off
billion.
yeah,
So they're not. You
people are
can't
still
even
running
break
off
even on it.
stashes.
Right.
They're still running off stashes and trying to like they have all this excess because we were in 1 bill. I remember buying my first Naglfar for like 800 mil. Like that's
I remember
extremely
getting
cheap
hold
for a
that
dread.
cheap. Yep.
Yeah, I think that dread should be like personally. I think whole should sit like at like 3.5 or less, maybe even 4, and then carrier is probably like 3. But like the fact that they're like 5 bill right for a hole right now, and that's just the going price because people are running off stashes. But the build run right now is like 10.5. That's just I get they're trying to like deplete stuff in the game, but if you make stuff so expensive like this, no one's even gonna consider using them. Like it's the whole reason like no one's really using caps across the map right now, or if they are, they have a huge stash, in my opinion.
Unless they can kill a Titan that's
what happened
worth
to my fucking video?
3 times nothing.
Even if they, here's
back,
the thing though.
People got distracted
you-
watching you,
Yeah.
watching you getting
We're all trying to
animated in
figure
your
out
work
what you were
call.
saying. It was good.
If you drop on a Titan right
bullshit.
now that's worth 180 bill, and you take the current build price of dreads, say you drop 30 dreads on them. If you use the build cost versus the cost they're being sold right now, you lose ISK because the build cost is like 10.5, so 1810. That's 100.
Yeah.
If you drop 18 dreads on a Titan, then you break ISK even, but you're not going to be able to kill unless it's not under an umbrella and 18 or a dread or a Titan with 18 dreads.
Are we talking about scarcity?
Yeah.
Or is it just industry
Talking about
changes?
industry stuff and trying to deal with that.
Well-
I think with how summer is now upon us, or at least most people in like the northern hemisphere, and then COVID restrictions across most like civilized places being loosened and people going outside and people leaving the game, and plus scarcity, the fact like no one wants to. I think it's pushing people away from even considering logging in because they're like, why would I put through all this work when I can, go outside and have fun? And I think the sooner they end scarcity, the sooner they are able to pull people back into the game.
I don't know about that. So I'd say my biggest problem with the scarcity and industry changes and the issue you just described, how the increase in prices is changing all the calculus on whether it's a good idea or a bad idea to fight in all kinds of different situations. I'd say you can boil down all the haphazardness about this whole scarcity situation in that CCP's got an econ team and a balance team. And from what I can tell, and Brisc, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. They are not really working together. They are the econ team's out doing their things. Their goal is to fix the EVE economy, quote unquote, as if that doesn't have an impact on balance or PvP or wars or content generation or anything else, which is ridiculous in a sandbox situation. And this has been my primary criticism with CCP's approach to the game as of late, is that they seem, the way they've organized their teams to address different issues, it makes it very difficult for them to consider these changes in and how they will affect different parts of the game. You know, for a perfect example, Rise put out a changes to hacks that was very clearly designed to nerf hacks in a way that basically only buffed battleships and bombers against them. You know, he removed that roll bonus um, that reduced their sig with MWDs. And if you haven't done a lot of theory crafting with battleships versus hacks, you may not realize how critical that was. So there was a, basically, before that roll bonus was removed, your battleships really needed to have between like a 2.6 to a 3.4 or 3.5 tracking rating to hit them at anywhere from 70 to 110 kilometers without webs or paints. And you don't want to web or paint hacks, or at least paint them, because it kind of tips them off they're about to be primaried, which only matters when there's no tie-dye. But removing that roll bonus basically meant that almost all battleships can now track hacks pretty effectively. Before, it was really only Megathrons and Apox and a couple of others if you special fit them. There was a kind of a niche there, and it affected battleship fleet comps a little bit. But now that the roll bonus is gone, a lot of battleships can track hacks, and pretty easily. And then almost immediately after Rise released that battleship, that hack nerf, CCP comes and adjusts the prices on battleships. And to act like that wasn't, two changes almost working against each other is kind of ridiculous. CCP should be able to look at. They need to look at this from a bigger picture. And I obviously I'm not as privy to every conversation, but just judging on the way they've approached most of their updates the past 2 or 3 years, it does seem like they are not. Their teams are not as tied in as they should be with a bigger picture or an overall vision. The econ team clearly has a vision, but I don't. It's clearly only related to economic stuff. And I couldn't, for the life of me, tell you what CCP's vision is for the overall game beyond the economic changes.
Funny thing
So,
is, to ProGod's point, the Team Talos, the balance team is theoretically part of the ecosystem team. They are in that group. I think the real issue here, and I mean, I understand your concern, and I agree with you to a certain extent. I think the problem is that they don't want to be doing balance changes based on ISK value because they know that changes. And they know that the costs and the way that they were doing the industry changes that was changing the inputs was gonna cause a price spike immediately. But then down the road, they fully expected that they're going to have to start turning the faucets back on, loosening things up, and that's going to balance things out in terms of what the ISK value is versus what the value of that thing in the game is. So I was frustrated too, because I was finally excited. We were getting some solid changes that were going to make battleships be as useful, more useful than hacks. Because it drives me crazy. When I started playing Eve, the battleship was the ship everybody wanted to get. I started playing this game. I was desperate to get into a Raven. That's why that was my unattainable ship when I started playing. And when I finally got there, I was so excited. And then I realized that I didn't train any of my other skills up, and I got blown up like immediately. So you learn that in Eve. But the point is, you have to have the ability to source the stuff, to pay for it, to have the IS to pay for it, the materials to build it. And then it has to be useful enough that it's going to be a doctrine that somebody goes out and actually puts in space, as opposed to something else that's cheaper and does a similar job. Like, this is one of the reasons why it drives me crazy about these Edencom ships, because they look good on paper and program. I remember you were out when they came out, that you're like, holy shit, these things are going to be amazing. This is really overpowered,
Yeah.
But because the drop rates on the books and the skill books are so bad, and the just the sourcing of all the materials is so hard, nobody other than really, I guess you guys have a doctrine, and I think Horde has a doctrine, and that's it. Nobody else has adopted it yet.
And the
And
problem
that's
is,
tough.
if they bring them out and we
yeah.
focus them, are you going to be able to replace them? You know, it's going to be tough.
Right. That's the thing. You up a fleet, and then how do you get a new one? You know, that's
But see,
so
this is
they
actually
need to understand that. I think they're taking a longer view of this, and I think part of that problem is that they see the longer view. They think they know where it's going, and if there's an issue here, well, we'll tweak it. If there's an issue there, well, we'll tweak it. But they haven't communicated that effectively to us, so we're looking at this saying, all right, this is the new normal. How long is this going to last? And they may only think it's going to last for a month, but we don't know that. All we see is, all right, now a battleship costs $1 billion. Great. I'm not using that now. I'm going to go use a Ferox.
okay. So, Brisc, you brought up something that is actually a great point, and one of my primary complaints. So you are right. CCP does have somewhat of an idea of where they're going, but they refuse to fucking tell us, and it makes it almost impossible for us to plan. And in the absence of information, we have to err on the side of caution, right? We don't know when CCP is going to turn the faucets back on or when they're going to tweak this stuff back in the other direction. So Edencom ships are a perfect example. For some reason, and I know why, and I get it if it's a technical issue, but they decided to make Edencom ships require all their own new skills. So the Thunderchild, the battleship, is a really solid ship and in large numbers could be useful. But the only groups that can field large battleship fleets are the major alliances. And so if I'm, trying to decide what direction I should put tests to go towards in the future, if I want to go to Thunderchilds, I have to push the entire alliance to train 2 to 3 million skill points worth of skills for a ship I have no clue when I will be able to supply it. Why the fuck would I do that? So I'm not going to push tests into Thunderchilds unless I know for some, have a definitive plan from CCP on when these things are going to be useful. And that's probably my other big issue is that they don't consider balance on a, or not balance, but just game design in general. They seem to have kind of separated it between the teams a little too much. But the other one is that they used to give us a lot more information on what they were planning. And I know why they pulled back from that, and I get it, and it was reasonable at the time, but I think they've gone too far in the other direction. It has become impossible to plan, and it takes a lot of effort to shift the direction of a lot of these major organizations, but even these small organizations. And if you're even individual players, if you're a large industry player, I mean, these industry changes with the battleships needing battleships and capitals needing all kinds of new inputs. I mean, how disruptive was that? And CCP kind of just sprung it on you pretty quickly. In the old days, back before they adopted this kind of free form, we'll push patches out when we're ready and expansions out when we're ready. The expansions came every 6 months on schedule, and the idea of what was going to be in the expansions was usually out there for 3 or 4 months. You had a lot of time to think about it, plan for it, start adjusting if you wanted to, and they got rid of that to kind of help the development team out get so they weren't always cramming into these expansions. And I understand the reason for that, but we lost a lot when they did that as well. We lost the ability to plan. We lost the ability to have input. I mean, people. I agree with what most people are saying on Reddit about these interdiction nullifier changes. They almost instantly sprang it on the community, and did not get a lot of feedback there. So I don't think they need to be as worried about hiding stuff from the community anymore.
I agree
It's gone a
100%.
little too far in the other direction.
Yeah.
I agree with all the points you guys have made. But going back to scarcity, I think the one thing I did like about the indie changes is that they set it up to where they can easily scale back the numbers on for the required to build ships. So like when they decide that they want to make things cheaper, they can just next patch, okay, well now it requires X instead of X. Um, now I don't think they should change that often, but it's nice to be able to do that. But the current scarcity, like disallows or makes fights, especially not for the blocks, but like for the mid-scale and smaller groups, makes fights like I guess I don't know the right word for it. Makes people not want to fight. Like the fight I had when I wasn't here the first minute, it was like 35 nightmares. It was 40 max, and the other team didn't take the fight because they said, "Okay, it'd be too expensive to replace our max." That
Yeah.
But
Well,
that's what I was
why don't
told.
they
Let,
play
let's let's
something
be
else then?
honest.
Yeah.
Everyone, I think a lot of people rightfully called out that the stupidest thing the ecosystem team ever put out was that whole their mantra where one of them was scarcity leads
Scarcity.
to
Scarcity
conflict.
breeds conflict.
Everyone
It
looked at
just did
that.
not get
Anyone
there.
who's ever had to
If you go back,
supply like an alliance or like run a war looked at that, or even fought in one, looked at that and just laughed.
Yeah.
That was the
yeah,
most
the
ridiculous
if you
thing I've
go
ever
back,
seen.
if you go back and look at the fight like almost a month ago, probably less now, when Volta fought Fraternity and NSH and Nightmares versus Tempest Fleet issues. Both sides, like I was talking to Volta after that, and they said they literally would probably not have been able to replace any Nightmares if they had ended up losing that fight, or like because the price of battleships and especially faction ones is just insane. Scarcity does not breed conflict; it makes people way more risk averse.
Yeah.
Well, so
I agree with
here's
that 100.
here's
percent
what it does that's even worse.
Not at a block level, because blocks like can just fly hundreds of hacks, but like at a medium or like smaller scale, then yeah, it
So
makes
even
people
then,
not want to fight
these
because
guys
like,
got to
well, I don't have
replace this stuff, and you got to be able to
yeah,
replace it. I mean, if you blow up the fleet and you've
exactly,
got no more of those ships and you don't have an easy way to replace it, there you go.
So here's what it does
exactly.
that's even worse, though, and this is what I fear more than anything is that you could say in the long run, well, you're still using those ships that you used to use because they were cheap, but we've rebalanced them now. They're more expensive, and eventually you'll shift to the cheaper stuff, and you'll stop fielding nightmares, and you'll stop fielding T1 battle cruisers and stuff like that. But once again, if that economic balance, and we'll get to this, but this idea that price is not a balancing factor needs to be kicked to the curb. It is absolutely a balancing factor, and I
I
get
completely agree
the,
with
the
that.
the Titan stuff. That that there'll never be more than a few Titans. That's just a meme at this point. Um, Price is a balancing factor, and so if you get to this point where you're trying to balance people out of ships by making it cost too much, but not addressing the balance of those ships, you create this all or nothing scenario where if someone decides, let's say, because nightmares are so expensive, people just start using feroxes for everything, which is quite a possibility if things go a certain way.
It's already
But
headed
then
that
one
way.
group,
It is already
one
headed that
group
way.
decides to field nightmares, and the only way you're going to beat those nightmares is if you bring a fuck ton of ferox. It's like you're creating this situation where you have to put so much effort in to beating someone that is deciding to field that expensive thing because the disparity does not match the disparity in balance does not match the cost. This is exactly what happened when PL and NC Dot had all the Titans back from 2011 to 2015. They had most of the Titans, and yes, there was technically a way to beat them, technically. But who the fuck was going to put in all that effort to suicide so many ships to beat those Titans? We learned nobody was, and we eventually had to balance it away, and that's how we got Rorqual, so everyone could build up their Super and Titan fleet. Like this,
The
you don't want to make the game in a
Well, Manny kind of
situation
did though,
where
didn't he?
what?
The slow cats and the wrecking ball and that shit.
Well, no, that was PL and NC fielding it
I guess
though.
that's true. That's feeling it. Yep, you're right.
Yeah. So,
the
um,
if you I
like,
don't think
so you,
nightmares and faction
huh,
battleships should be cheap.
well, no, but like in general though, if you try to push the prices up on stuff and make it to where there's things are super rare but super powerful, eventually a group will get enough of that super rare, super powerful stuff, and they'll basically say, we can beat you every time, with one hand tied behind our back. And yeah, eventually one day you'll be able to get this perfect trap set up and you'll kill all of our super expensive ships. But that's not good content because basically this is the problem that happened with those Titans early on in the decade is like it took a perfect trap to beat the PL and NC Dot fleet, and no one put any effort to set it up because it's not worth it. It's just like you spend 5 months out of the year setting up for one day, and the other 4 months and 30 days you're just getting your ass kicked because
And you don't have a
you're
guarantee that
trying
it
to
works.
bridge this gap. It's not a good way to balance a game. It is just not.
Here is the problem that I have, and look, I understand where you guys are coming from in terms of the cost and stuff, and you're right. I mean, we do make decisions based on price in the game. Should CCP make decisions based on price? I am very hesitant to say that they should make balancing decisions based on price because one, I don't think they understand the prices. I don't think they understand the way the market works, and I think they're extremely, extremely bad at predicting what their changes are going to do to the market.
Oh, that's
And
true.
that makes me nervous when like, well, we're going to make this change and we expect this price is going to go to here, and then that's what this is going to. And I look and I see that. I mean, we looked at a lot of that stuff behind the scenes on the ecosystem changes, and at some point, I just had to say, guys, these numbers, they're all made up numbers. They're like you're looking at a snapshot in time of what the price is today. It can be completely different a week from now. And we have seen big shifts based on a variety of factors on what the cost of all of these different things are, and little things have an impact on it. So how are they really going to know what the price is going to be when they make the change? So I get a little nervous when we start saying we're going to rely on CCP to guess what the price should be and then balance the ship based on what the price should be, because in the end the market will set that, and the balance changes are always going to lag behind whatever the market is, because they're not going to say, all right, well, the cost of a Ferox went up by 80 million ISK, so now it's double, so we need to double the damage to make it worth using again. I mean, that's not, I just don't see that as being a good way to do it. I think I'd rather what they do is balance the ships in game based on what they are, make sure every ship has a role, make sure everything is good at doing something, make sure that there's an ecosystem that makes sense. And then at the end, frankly, what I want them to do is just put stuff back in the game so people can make money again, and that they're not constantly worried about, do I fight today? Do I take this fleet out? Can I afford to lose it? I mean, as much as people say, well, this game used to matter and risk was a thing, and if you lost something, it used to really hurt. Yeah, it did. And it was never fun. That was never fun. That was never the fun part of Eve. It was the harden the fuck up kind of part of Eve. And nowadays, when you have so many other things you could potentially do, I don't want people to go out there and say, "Well, I lost my Titan. I'm not playing anymore. I quit," because I'm never going to be able to get another one because they've made it so hard to do that.
There's
I
a
think that
hard
sucks.
there's a hard
Yeah.
line between the two though, of like price of ships and balance of ships, and it's not something that's easy to get to. But I think I agree with you. I think that I think the more you should make it to where people can be making more ISK again and ending that scarcity, or at least starting to wrap it up. Because the way I think about it, if the more people that put in the time and effort into the game, the more rewarded they should be. So if they're grinding hours of ISK and spending a lot of time in the game to make money, then I think that they should be rewarded by making substantial amount of money, or making enough money to where they don't have to worry about like replacing a 10 build red or something like that if they lose it. Because I think that you should encourage fights instead of this whole, oh, I don't want to take this fight because the ship I'm flying costs 10 bill, or the Macario I'm flying costs 2. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I think, I
Yeah.
mean, it's hard to tell where this even ends, right? At the moment, I think this is still the beginning of the whole scarcity thing to a degree. Like where is it gonna end? Where are the prices gonna be? Like, I think every FC, when those battleship changes first came, right? Every FC was like, oh shit, yeah, battleships are gonna be great, and everyone looked forward to this. And so Tech 1 battleships, I don't understand why they had to get like the same materials as supers and titans and stuff, right? If it was aimed as supers and caps and so on, like why do they share so many materials? I don't know. But in general, right, I guess we'll have to wait and see like where this actually ends. And by then we have to fly Munins and Feroxes, I guess.
Which bores the
Isn't that
shit
an
out of me.
Agree with
issue?
Brisc's
Isn't that an
point.
issue though, Pando? That we
It
have to
kinda-
wait and see where it ends. I mean, like,
It is. Yeah, I agree
how
with
long
you.
have we been waiting and seeing on the next change from CCP? I feel like we've been in limbo for
What, a
years
year and a
now.
half at least?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I agree with you. But yeah. What you're gonna do?
Every time I get to fly, when somebody pings a Boltec fleet, or we ping Nightmares, or we ping Macarials, I'm all excited because that's what I want to fly. When we do Raven, all your Raven doctrines, all the Raven stuff we used to do, that was the best ever. I hate that I just leave myself unimmune and know that I'm going to be in the right doctrine ship for like 80% of the pings we get.
Like I don't
Scarcity's made it to where
I
people
don't
can't make
mind.
money, in my opinion, or not as much money as they used to, and so it just disincentives people. Like, I don't want to risk that. And I think that when someone logs into Eve, or when someone first gets started at Eve, they open up the ship tree and they look at it and like, oh, that Titan looks awesome, and then they sort of do some research. Oh, that's a huge investment, and then they see these things, battleships, and like, oh, I see everyone flying battleships, on Reddit, on Zkill, etc. That'd be awesome to train into, but that's a lot of ISK investment for a new guy to get into a battleship.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of investment for a Titan. I mean, imagine it this way: you spend what? I mean, I bought my Titans were both, I think, in the 100 billion ISK range. Now they're a little bit more than that, obviously, and they'll probably be a little bit more down the road. But you're gonna sink 100 billion ISK into a ship that you use 3 times a year, maybe, if you're not the main bridger guy. I mean, that's a lot of investment, and a character usually.
Yeah.
Too. That's a lot for 3 fights a year. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm advocating. I want them to create some kind of PVE for these big ships to do that's designed for them
Yeah,
to
you
get
hunt
them in
them.
space, so we can hunt them, and so that you use them
do
more
see-
than
Well, we
just
had
our
it.
fleet.
We had it. They got rid of
Oh,
You
it.
do
and
see
they nerfed it,
people
exactly.
using Golem now. You see a
Right,
lot of
everybody's
people
at
ratting
Marauders
Golem.
now. Everybody's in Marauders now.
More.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which I'm I love the Marauder buffs. Don't get me wrong,
But so that makes me wonder, like, are there any recent changes, like specific changes you have in mind where you have strong feelings and like, oh, shit, I would have loved to be in the room and stop them doing this? Or maybe you have a change that you really liked, like recent, like let's say in the last year or two.
a change I really liked.
Well, it doesn't have to be like, but like you're running for CSM, so I
Dangerous
imagine
question.
maybe there was one change recently that you thought like, shit, I should have been there and stopped them. One particular change.
I thought the ADC was a pretty creative and elegant solution to the hack versus battleship dynamic, and now that we've had the roll bonus removed, it's pretty balanced from a capability standpoint. Whether price gets there, or we get the other parts of the escalation ladder worked out to where you actually see more hacks versus battleships, or there's so many things going on in the battlefield. It gets tough there, but the hacks used to be useful before the ADC, like 7 or 8 years ago, because they sig tanked battleships, and it was really only a situation where the meta was undeveloped. Once most groups figured out how to counter hacks with battleships, hacks kind of slowly faded away, and then of course T3 cruisers were so strong at the time they kind of replaced hacks. The ADC is an example of adding in some skill gameplay that actually matters, and kind of giving different hull types, different niches that allow for some more creativity. So I thought, as far as getting hacks to be useful again, the ADC was probably one of the better ideas that I've seen. And so more things like that, like the fact that CCP is trying with the sig reduction ADC basically for the battleship. That's interesting. That's a tool. Now, granted, the target spectrum breaker was also a tool. I wish they hadn't gotten rid of it, but
Nobody really used it though.
it had some
It was
interesting use
rare.
cases. No, it was used. So when it first came out, PL used it once against I forget who they were fighting. So if you think about how it worked, and I'm not sure if they got rid of it because it was glitched and it didn't work all the time, but when it was working, it broke the locks of anyone who was locking you.
Chance,
And it
yeah.
did it on a percentage chance base. So let's say 100 people were locking you. I can't remember the exact breakdown, but it broke the locks at 50 of those 100. So if you had enough VHP and you were against an enemy that was not high alpha but high DPS with a high rate of fire and low volley, then and you had facts on grid, 150, let's say 100 enemies are shooting you, and then you have 2 facts. Your facts are only 2 out of 102, so the probability that their locks get broken is pretty low. So you hit that target spectrum breaker. Decent chance one of your faxes keeps its lock on you, and then 50 of their 100 ships have their locks broken, and they didn't volley you. Now you've got those reps flowing. It was an interesting way to break that kind of use brick tank battleships against large fleets. It very niche, but one of those tools that Eve is. This is what makes Eve so interesting. There's a lot of things in the game that don't get used often, but every now and then there comes a very specific situations where all of a sudden that's the answer to your problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wish they hadn't changed it. I wish they just would have added a new module and kept that target spectrum breaker.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it didn't hurt. Like, it wasn't OP. So if it's not OP, leave it in the game, right?
Yeah.
So give me more options, definitely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What about the other guys? I mean, Brisc, you were in the room, I guess. So what is the change that you were like the most?
I mean, you guys are going to yell at me when I say it, but obviously, like, I spent, not even kidding, a year on the red dot. I did. I spent a fucking year on that goddamn red dot because people would not stop bothering me about it.
I have to stop
campaigned
you.
on it. I mean,
I personally love the red dot and don't give a shit, by the way.
I don't give a shit.
I still have it on.
No, look.
Me too. I never noticed.
This is the thing that drives me crazy. I think there are half of the people in the game who could give a rat fuck that it was even there or that it was taken out. And then there are other people, then the other half think this is the biggest, worst thing that CCP has ever done in the history of Eve.
Some people just why did they ever do?
And there's no middle road. But I mean, that red dot stuff is more of a joke. I think, frankly, the thing that I'm happiest about, and I know this is going to make people pissy because it's still not in the game yet, but the mobile observatories, the way that they have designed these, I think is a very, very good example of we present a ton of ideas to CCP to fix a problem. AFK cloaky camping has been a problem for quite a long time. I hear about it all the time, and it's not just Care Bears that bitch about it. It's crabs, but at the same time, there are people that are really mad that they can't go and they want to go fight these guys, and they have no agency. There's no gameplay to interdict or go fight any of these guys when they're doing it. We presented tons of ideas. Make the cloak use a certain amount of capacitor, and after a while it runs out, and then you have to let it sit. Or make it use fuel, make it use stront, make it use something. There were all of these different ideas talking about this thing, and they came up with something that I think solves the immediate problem of the AFK side, has a relatively small impact. And I know, Panda, I know you disagree with me, so I know you're going to yell at me about it. That has a relatively small impact on people who are paying attention and actively hunting, and that unless it's in like a big fleet fight, and hopefully they tweak the numbers a little bit, should not have a huge impact on anything else that's going on. I thought that was a good solution to a problem that was narrowly tailored to specifically hit the one thing and not fuck over all of the legitimate uses of being cloaky and sitting around and camping. The hyper supers thing they need to fix. That needs to get fixed.
So,
and yes, I do see the others issues that it causes, and I want them to take care of that because I want this to be narrowly focused just on the AFK cloaky part. But I think the fact that they're willing to do that and that they came up with an idea of something that's different, that I think takes care of the problem in a way that should not have a massive impact on it. If it does that, I will absolutely advocate to fix it. But Pando, you can yell at me now and tell me that I'm full of shit. So I know you don't like this.
So the first thing that people should talk about is like, is cloaky camping the actual problem, or is it just a symptom of a problem, right? Because I don't think cloaky camping itself is necessarily the problem itself. Like, if there was ways to actually catch people and hunt them more reliably, you didn't need cloaky camping for it, that would be one thing. And then also, how do you actually drop someone's ADM in a system if it only takes a Gila that like passively reds for 4 hours and then it stays ADM 6, right? How else are you gonna ever do this on a bigger scale? Like,
you make sure you're
well, is that a problem with cloaky camping or with ADMs? Like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? Yeah. So the problem isn't necessarily, but now you're fixing a symptom, and now.
But that's the thing. That's not
hold on, Brisc.
But that's not the problem they're trying to fix.
Brisc, 1 second. Pando, are you saying that specific changes have effects on larger parts of the game, and that CCP should maybe consider more parts of the game before they make a
might
change?
be what I just.
Oh, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah,
That's something we should bring to CCP.
But so this change, like, why do they go so hard on that timer? The 15-minute invul timer is what I have
I think it's hard on the time.
an issue. I think
none of these numbers, I think, are fun. I think all these numbers are fungible, and they're going to look at it and they can tweak that very, very easily. If 15 minutes is not long enough, I will see them adding the time after it goes live. Because I think the biggest problem is right now, we like the guys in the chat, they're just going to macro this, they're just going to do this. We don't know what's going to happen until it's in the game, because you can't test a lot of this stuff on CC, because you need to have a real life, real world application of it before they get the data to make the changes. When they do that, if they don't fix this, if they don't reiterate on it relatively quickly, then I'm going to raise holy hell.
Yeah, maybe I should like finish my point just so people actually know what I'm talking about, right? So the 15-minute invul timer, I believe, is too short. Like 15 minutes in EVE, that's nothing. Like, you know how long we stay on grid cloaked with like stuff that's, you know, potential content and stuff, you know, bomber fleets, be it chemos, be it whatever, like any sorts of cloaked fleets, which is already niche if you think about it. It's only bombers and chemos, really. There's no other cloaked fleets. I mean, you could do like a T3 fleet that could be bridgeable and all kinds of stuff. That would be like a way of doing things, but you don't really see them, right? So like you hit all these potential, you know, cloaky fleets that are already rare. 15 minutes. So when there's a big fight, there's going to be one of those observatories somewhere. And then the argument is going to be like, oh yeah, the EHP is so low. Yeah, I have to decloak for it though. Guess what's there? There's a Munin fleet ready to block my bombers. Like, I'm not going to decloak and kill that thing. I have to warp to safe, cloak everyone up.
You think they're going to sit on that the whole fight?
It depends on where it is. Yes, for sure. Why wouldn't they? If they don't have anywhere else to be.
Why am I going to waste a Munin?
Aren't they going to want to be somewhere else?
Why?
Yeah.
Why are you not?
Generally, I want my Munin fleet shooting enemy ships.
Wait, but if there's enemy ships to shoot, but let's say you have a Munin fleet in system, and
let's say you've got 40 bombers, you know, cloaked around a gate, ready to bomb, you know, anyone who warps to it. Yes, I agree.
But yeah, why wouldn't you, while you wait for hostiles, why wouldn't you put that observatory in a ping and then just fucking guard it? Like, and everything cloaky
but
has
I mean, if you want to guard it, that's fine. Those guys that aren't in the fleet.
I think you guys underestimate how annoying that's going to be for anything that's cloaky.
It's going to be annoying, but Panda,
scouts and sinos or bomber fleets or chemos.
We'll find out. And if it sucks, then we can ask them to fix it. And we have real life data and says, look, it's not enough time. We need to make this longer. And if it's true, then they'll I don't see these guys not changing it because we demonstrate that it needs to be longer. And here's what's happening.
Yeah, but that's the thing though. Like if it's aimed at like cloaky camping, right? 15 minutes, that's such a short time. Such a short time. Just push it to like an hour. You're still going to be fine.
You have to think about it too.
For the chat. For the record,
let's settle.
I'm in all of Pando's fleets. I'm in bombers all the time.
Brisc.
I'm in all of Pando's fleets. I'm out there doing blob stuff. I go hunting. We go whaling. I do that shit. I'm not some just paper pusher. Guys, I'm a line member. I play the game every day. All right. So yes, I'm not an FC and I'm not a theory crafter, but I see what these guys do because they're the ones telling me what to do, and I'm in those fleets with them. We can have a disagreement, but don't come back at me with this bullshit like you don't play the game. Look at my fucking kill board. Come on.
All right, Seddow, what were you saying?
As a guy who is in a coalition that specializes in hunting, and a guy who built his alliance off hunting, 15 minutes is extremely too short for a variety of reasons. Like, not just the fleet concept, but the fact that, like, say you are cloaky camping somebody, but like, the thing is, if you're, I don't know how to phrase it, if you're active, you have to be active every 15 minutes, but then if they're like only check for you every 15 minutes to see if you're uncloaked, then like you have to be on your computer for 3 hours every 15 minutes cloaking back up. And most of the time in the current meta, the only way to catch some things like supers is cloaky camping. Like, catching stuff is so hard in terms of hunting. 15 minutes is way too low, and the fact that it can be scaled up again by having what they say, 5 observatories in a system. Now if it was an hour, that's doable. But 15 minutes is way too short, and it's going to fuck with more than just hunting, more than just cloaky camping. You're going to worry about bomber fleets. Like, I completely agree with Pando on this point. I think
And
that there
to be
should be a
fair,
way to decloak a cloaky camper, but the 15 minutes is way too low because the main when I started seeing it was Goku fleets. It was cloaky camping, blue scouting, all that stuff. And if I had to, if the, like, so say there's a super rat in a system and you're not active throughout the most of the day, so you put a cloaky camper in there, you cloak him, and you come back later that day and he's ratting. Okay, cool, great, go for him. But say you have to be there every 15 minutes for 3 hours or throughout the day to re-cloak back up. That is ridiculous. No one has the time for that, and you're never going to catch that super. It just makes it so risk easy for crabs.
Yeah, I think it
to be fair to
highlights.
Pandos, I agree with you guys. And I pitched Pandos 30 minutes. I
Yeah,
pitched that to them. I gave it to them.
To be honest, 30 minutes is the absolute
minimum. I know it's the minimum. I know
and
it's
I
the
think
minimum.
that's the only
But
thing I could
told them
sell you guys, right?
And I told them that. And I gave them all that stuff. Now, whether or not they do it on launch, I don't know. But they know that that's what we have suggested.
think they will.
It's on the paper. So,
It's
and I'm
gonna
not
be
I
fine.
think
defending
you start with an
guys.
hour, and then you either increase or decrease it there.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, why would you start at the absolute low? Like, you couldn't go any lower. Let's be honest, right? You could just say, okay, it's instant. Like, it anchors instant, and you instantly get everyone decloaked. That would be ridiculous. 10 minutes, 15 minutes. That's nothing.
Guys, the
in terms
reason
of
why
youth.
they're doing 15 and not an hour is because you're looking at this from the perspective of
Someone with
we don't want
patience
them to
sitting
impact
around
what we're
trying
actively
to
doing.
fucking create shit.
They're
yeah.
trying to figure out how do we make this short enough that it'll fuck the AFK guy, because that's what the issue is that they're trying to fix. They want to get rid of people doing the AFK thing.
But-
they don't have a problem with cloaky camping. They're trying to figure that. And they think they're trying to 15 minutes is what they think is a reasonable amount of time. I disagree. I know you guys disagree.
But
We
wait a
want it
second.
longer, but they're going to start low and work higher rather than the other way around. Because if they start higher and it doesn't do anything, then it doesn't fix the actual problem.
So wait a second. Let's be clear here. What AFK guys are sitting around cloaked that are not cloaky campers that are a problem for the game? I don't understand. Is it like a Sino that I just say, okay, I stopped traveling, whoop to a safe cloak up? Is that a problem that I'm now AFK for 2 hours? You know, like what other AFK?
The
stuff-
24/7 cloaky campers are not exactly.
That's the
engaging
issue. It's the
gameplay.
guys. Yeah,
That's
the
not
guys
what
that
I'm
log in
saying.
at downtime. The Omekas that seed a whole system with a bunch of fucking alts that are there just to
No.
fuck with you.
Okay,
I'm
so
saying-
think about it this
one
way.
second,
If
one
it's-
second. I
The
wanna
issue
be-
is the 24 hours.
I just want to be clear here. I didn't say cloaky camping is great. I said you just made it look different. Like they didn't try to fix cloaky camping. It's about AFK gameplay. But cloaky camping is the only
That's
AFK
the
game.
point.
But that's the only
That's the
AFK
only-
gameplay
this
that I
is-
think.
That's the AFK gameplay they're trying to fix with this change. They're
Okay.
they're doing other stuff on other AFKs. Look, I don't like the AFK mining stuff. I don't like the AFK ratting stuff. I don't think you should be allowed to have that much of an impact on the game when you're not physically playing it. I know that a lot of people enjoy
Yeah.
doing the AFK thing where you're fucking watching Netflix and playing it, but that's bullshit. Play the
I
game.
think
If you're going to
nobody-
play the game, be present.
Yeah,
you
I
know?
think nobody
So,
is actually a fan
This
of
is that part of their
cloaky
fix.
camping, right? Just to be clear. But yeah.
So if I could
All
offer
right.
a few points. Well, Seddow, go ahead.
Well,
I'll
I
shut
was
up
gonna
and
say-
get coffee while you guys talk.
First off, if you're saying that like AFK is the issue, and like I agree that you should not be able to be fully AFK, but there's a balance in fully AFK and semi AFK, and if you make it to where it's repeating the same thing over and over, then I don't think that is the best solution for crabbing or local mining making this. But back to that's a whole different story. We don't have to get into. But back to the cloaking everything. If you made it an hour, and your issue is the 24-hour guy who wakes up at downtime to log in his tunes and then cloak and go to work, go do his real
An
life.
hour would already.
That's 24 chances. That's 24 chances a day for him to get decloaked if it's an hour. In my opinion, 24 chances instead of like 108 chances if you make it 15 minutes. 108 chances, 108 times he has to be at his computer every day if he actually wants to do it is ridiculous to
Yeah.
have to re-hit that cloak button. 24 times is reasonable. If you could make it like 30, so that like if he comes home and you like say he comes home and he sits on his computer and he logs in his cloaky camper cloaks, and then he has to and he goes and like hangs out with his wife or whatever, and people are like, oh, cloaking camping shouldn't be allowed, but it is a legitimate way to catch crabs and to catch supers that is used all the time. And if you take that away permanently, then I think you take away a lot of risk or a lot of gameplay in terms of hunting. Like more
Yeah.
people do that than you think. So if he logs into Cloaky Camper, then goes hangs out with his wife, and he sets a timer. Oh, I have to come back in 30 minutes or an hour to re-cloak back up. That's
Yeah.
fair. Yeah,
Well,
yeah. Like
but
I could agree with
So
that. But if he has to do
Seddow,
that every 50 minutes, it's insane.
Seddow, are you saying that by affecting AFK Cloaky camping, they might be buffing other parts of the game that they didn't realize?
Oh my god, yes.
Oh, or should they have considered all of that? Oh, that's an interesting point.
so
Well, I think that's the reason that hasn't been
So let me
Wait a
let me
second,
let
you're
me
breaking up,
offer a
Seddow.
few things. Let me offer a few things
because you
here.
got
Yeah, he is breaking up.
I think Seddow's trying to say something.
so much negative feedback from the community. No, go ahead. I'm good.
All right.
So yeah,
I'm good.
first,
I'm good.
I will
Can you
say
not
that
hear
these
me?
observatories, even in their current iteration, really only affect camping. I hear what you're saying, Pando, about like if you have bombers in systems, but I have to disagree. So let me, if I have a fleet and system, and I know that you have a bombing fleet and system. I don't have a spy in your fleet, but I know you have a bombing fleet and system, and that's an important distinction. I can't know whether you have warped off to recloak or not. I have to assume that you're always ready to bomb and act accordingly. So even though you have to warp off every 15 minutes, and that might make you miss one or two bombing runs, it isn't going to change my behavior at all. So the threat of the bomber fleet is still always there. And yes, it's inconvenient for you, and yes, you might miss a couple of bombing runs, but that is not as big of an effect as you think it is. It's not going to change
I think you underestimate
fleet behavior in any way. No, I can't warp to a gate that I know you're about to you could bomb if I don't know whether or not you're there, and I can't know whether you're not
that.
there
But that's not even my
unless I have a
point.
spy in your fleet.
So my point is, now you would go anchor one of these just because you can. Why wouldn't you? It's 40 mil, you don't give
Sure.
a shit, right? You anchor one. Now I have to warp all my guys off, spread them out and cloak them up every 15 minutes. And you know 15 minutes in a fight is leading up to a timer, big timer, 15 minutes is nothing. So I have to do this constantly. Then bombers.
So why don't we just warp an interceptor fleet and kill the thing and then warp it off? Just warp the lights over and
Oh
warp
no,
them
no, no,
off.
Brisc, that's not. He's right. I could cover it, but
Well, you would just
I
sit
don't
there.
know when you're doing that, Pando. You're cloaked, and I don't have a spy in your fleet for this example,
But
so
it's
I have
not
no
even-
idea if you already did that or not.
It doesn't even matter. It's not about you like catching us decloaking. It's about the fucking annoyance of this whole thing for no apparent reason. Because if you think about the 15-minute timer, the invuln timer, you would say it's the amount of time they think at which you count as a cloaky AFK camper, whatever you want to call it, right? AFK gameplay. If you haven't done anything in 15 minutes in EVE, you are counted as AFK and you don't deserve to be cloaked. That's basically what it says.
Okay, so
By
if your
15
point
minutes?
is that it's an annoyance and that the frequency is too often, I can accept that, but I just wanted to make it clear that this is not going to change FC behavior as far as worrying about bombers. You can't know whether those bombers are perched or not, or whether they have warped off to recloak.
Well, yeah,
so
I
you still have to
never.
assume that they are perched.
Well, I never said other FCs would change their behavior because of
Right.
it. I said they
Okay,
would
well,
always
that's just,
put one up because they
I
can.
heard that earlier, so I just want to make
Right.
sure that that's understood. The
But
second thing is like I get what you're saying, and I know that hunting is a pretty big thing in EVE, and for a lot of things, it is really the only way to catch stuff, and maybe that should be considered. But I just strongly disagree that there should be any gameplay where you just leave your client logged in 24/7. That's
I think nobody.
not good gameplay to me.
I think nobody
And
wants that.
as far as how to
All
fix that,
gameplay
agree,
that
yeah.
creates a meta where logging out is preferable to staying in and doing something, which drives me crazy.
well, even then,
No.
just the fact that like cloaky camping 24/7 is a legitimate tactic that's like, let's be honest, that's not good gameplay. A company that wants to have a good
Nobody
game that makes
claims.
profits should not encourage that. So
You should be
Like,
encouraged to make
as far as
EDLs
a
and leave them
elegant,
in space.
as far as a way to solve that, this is about as elegant a solution as I think you could come up with. And yes, 15 minutes is almost certainly too frequent. But I think if you bump this to 30 minutes or an hour, and Brisc, as I understand it, and maybe I'm wrong, it's not every 15 minutes. There's supposed to be a randomness to it, so you can't time it, right?
40% chance. Once it goes active, it's 40% chance every 10 minutes for an hour for 140 minutes. I think is the
So
way.
yeah, I think if you had it within like if they bumped it to like a 30-minute minimum to an hour maximum and made it random within then, that would actually make it pretty hard to bot too. Well, I guess bots are open like every 2 or 3 minutes or whatever, but
We can't. I mean, that's the thing. Like the guys in the chat, well,
so
they're just trying to
that's
make
the
a
other
macro.
point I wanted to
You
make
can't
though.
balance shit against stuff that's illegal already. It's against the
Well,
rules.
so
of business.
that is the one
Balance
point I wanted to
based on
make though. People are coming out and they're like, "Well, bots are just going to be a way around this." I'm I understand that, and that's unfortunate. But the idea is to raise the barrier of entry. The goal here is to reduce cloaky camping on a game wide scale. So the harder you make things to do, yes, some people are going to figure it out and they're going to come up with elegant solutions for it. But a lot of people aren't. They're just not going to put in that effort. They're not going to risk botting, et cetera, et cetera. So you will reduce cloaky camping with this, whether bots figure it out or not. And it seems like they certainly will.
I just say ban the bots,
Then if
ban all
the
the bots, and
issue,
get them out of the game.
Yeah.
if
But we
the
can't afford to be held
if the
hostage by
big
what these assholes
worry
are doing that are not breaking the rules. Sorry, Seddow, go ahead.
if the big worry no, that's my bad. If the big worry is that or the big counterpoint is it's too quick and that it um, makes it harder for people to catch stuff because cloaky camping is a very common way people catch stuff because it's very hard to
I
do it
wouldn't
other
even
ways,
call that cloaky
then
camping, right?
you need to address it. Yeah, I really wouldn't either, but it's like actively hunting, but it's different. And if that's the big oh, you shouldn't do this, then there's about middle ground you can find, which is okay, bump it to 30 minutes to an hour at like a 50% chance or 60 or whatever, and then you have to make it to where it's you have to look at the reason why people are doing it. Okay, it's to catch crabs. Why are they doing it? Because it is the best way to catch crabs or supers or
Yeah.
people who are using heavy assets in the hunt. And then you have to buff other ways to do it. And a great way would do it, which I think if you implemented these two changes at the same time, I think if you made it 30 minutes to an hour and then like a 50 or 60% chance, whatever, to decloak you. And then at the same time, you said, okay, we know you can't hunt as much, so we're going to delay no local 10 seconds. That would make things completely different. And I get that that is a whole different topic, but what I'm saying is if the big counter is, okay, I can't hunt anymore, then you have to think of something else to make it easier for people to hunt.
Yeah.
Or else,
I agree with
you're
that.
ruining the
Just-
game style.
Yeah, just
But
to
here, I this is a bigger point, and I want to go back, take us back a step because we've been arguing about the in the weed stuff here for a little bit. This is a perfect example of the difficulties that CCP has when they're making balances to the game and when the CSM is out there having debates. Listen, you have Pando, who has more experience at bomb, who has under his belt, along with Alice, the biggest bomb run in the history of EVE under his belt. He's been doing bomber stuff forever. He understands all this shit. You got the guy that he
don't make
shot
that face, Progod. What are you doing?
on the other side.
No, I think
Come
Skilly
on,
is the best
who's
bomb
killed
run when they
160
bombed
billion with one
Progon.
bombing run before? Come on.
I think
When
I've
they
lost
killed,
more than that in a bombing run.
when
so-
Progon lost a whole nightmare fleet to Skilly. There's a perfect example.
How much is
all
it?
right.
How much is that full nightmare fleet? Wait a second.
Well,
you
yeah,
asked-
no, it's completely different than what it was.
some of the largest bombing runs in EVE history. There we
All right,
go.
there we go. We won't break
Yeah.
down over who's
Hey,
got the bigger dick.
if skill you
The
have
point
the,
is,
the
you got
biggest
Pando,
one,
who's an
right?
expert. You got ProGod, who's an expert, and he's the guy that Pando is going to be shooting at, and they both disagree. And then you got me as some random schmuck at line member who's just saying what he thinks, and obviously barely plays the game according to people who have never seen me play the game for some reason, even though I do it every night. And Seddow, another FC, very skilled, very well known, and has been doing this for a long time. All these guys know their shit, and they can look at stuff and look at changes and predict what's going to happen. And you've got CCP where they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. They don't know what this is going to actually create. They have an idea, they have a hypothesis, but they're not really going to know they put it in the game. This is why it's so hard for these guys sometimes to make decisions about balance, to make decisions about what they're going to fix and what they're not going to fix, and why all too often they'll propose these changes. We'll get into a big fight, and they'll just say, well, fuck it. We're not going to do anything. We'll just leave it to status quo because we can't figure out if what we're going to do is going to hurt or help. And that leads to stagnation. So I think this is a perfect example of why these guys have a very tough job, why the CSM is necessary, so we can hash as much of this stuff out. But at some point, CCP is going to say, look, I got your guys' feedback. We understand what you think. We understand this is how you feel. We're going to try this and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, we'll tweak it or we'll pull it out. And then they have to follow through with that. And if they do
But
that,
they have
they're
to
doing
follow
the right
through,
thing.
Brisc, and that's
That's
been
the
one of the
problem.
bigger
There are-
problems.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's one of the problems. And I agree.
exactly. There
They're
you
doing
go.
a better job of
From-
it. They're doing a better job of it than they've done in the past. But yes, that absolutely is a legitimate criticism that they put stuff in the game and they don't fix it when it's broken and it stays broken for fucking ever.
Right.
That's completely legitimate. But
The
they're
other thing
trying
I
to
think
do
that-
better, and I think they have a better record of fixing stuff after the fact in the last year, a year and a half, maybe 2 years than they had before, where stuff would get broken and never get fixed.
So to like before we actually finish this whole podcast, actually, because we are actually 10 minutes over, there's one
Time flies.
change that fits into this. Also, it's the notification stuff, right? They did iterate on it before it even came out, which I liked a lot, right? They put it out there, but still, it was so fast. Like suddenly, boom, we've got these notification things, right? And especially, I don't know why. That's what I wonder. Like, why? Where's this even coming from, right? Like, who asked for more notification stuff? And then I talked to the Wormholders, for example, about like the issue with frick holes and all that stuff. And then like the issue with they have with frick holes is like the defenders can bring in an endless amount of people. But it's not only the frick holes, it's also notification. Why they can bring stuff in. Like if I say remove all notification, beside maybe, let's say, leave it on shuttles, I don't know. Or leave it on shuttles and T3s, right? And T3s are pretty slow when they're nullified, by the way. Like, would that be too crazy? Like, do we need it on Scepters? I really don't think we do. I really don't think so. Right? I think it's bad for the game. It has been from the start. Fuzzy Claws, like obviously everyone knows those. So what do you guys think?
I mean, here's the thing, Pano, you're absolutely right. I think the problem was that the people that were asking for nullification changes were not very loud about it, but they were insistent, and it was pretty common. I mean, I would hear that a lot. I know Anominate was a big fan of getting rid of the nullification stuff. I know Merkelchen as well. I agree with them. I mean, they were able in CSM 13 to get them off of the combat interceptors, and they left them on the fleet ships. But I mean, what I said and what I thought was fair was put nullification on shuttles so that there is a sub-2 line, insta-warp nullified travel ship, but you can't carry a lot of cargo with that, and there's no weapons on it. And I said, set it up so that if you put a gun on an if you put it on an interceptor that has guns fitted, you can still have tackle, but you can't have guns. If you have guns fitted, then it's not nullified anymore, and that solves the problem. T3Cs, leave them alone. They get enough trade-offs to get nullified as it is. They don't need.
They're shitty enough as it is. No one's gonna.
Well, I mean, they've been fucked over so many times anyway that I don't want to touch them. The interceptor thing. I mean, the only real issue is just the clouds of you can't catch the stuff unless you catch a good chemo run, and they hit pretty hard when you get enough of them, and that was always a problem. And plus, you don't want combat ships that can just bust through a gate camp, and people forgot how to run gate camps. Like for the longest amount of time that I've been in the game, there was no such thing as nullification, and you had to learn how to do that. And if you couldn't figure it out, you're going to get fucked. Everybody's forgotten. Now they got to learn again.
Big point that ProGod has reiterated a lot, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brisc, but what we've learned is that CCP is, or what we've talked about a lot, is CCP has thrown all these changes out there in the past one that are changing a lot of the game, and they're suggesting a lot of changes that are making impacts to the game on other areas I don't think they consider. And the CSM's job is to be like, hey, we think this, or you're also affecting this, and they should listen to that and then base it off that. And from talking to other CSM members and some other people, a lot of these recent changes have just been dropped without like you guys having a chance to make a lot of feedback. And I correct me if I'm wrong there, or really suggest that feedback. And I think that even when they do drop these changes, sometimes, I mean, and this has been historically true, that like they don't like really look at your feedback and take advice to it or really listen to it. They just continue thinking that they do the right change.
It depends, and I think the problem is every team is different. How every team handles our feedback is different. The teams that are willing to give us a heads up versus the ones that don't. There are situations where we get the heads up far in advance, and we work on it a lot before they announce it to the public. And then there may be like the nullification changes. We've been working on that for months. And the same with the mobile observatories. We found out about that stuff months ago and have been working with them behind the scenes on all those changes. When they went live on CC, there was about a week, but that was because a lot of the stuff that they did, they already knew that they had the data. They already knew that this is what players thought about it, but they didn't have the actual metrics and they could not test it on CC to fix stuff. And then of course there was little shit that gets missed, but that's, I mean, that as much as it drives me crazy, it drives you guys crazy. That's I can't get too worked up when they forget to change the show info about something. I care more about when like the numbers are fucked up and they knew they were fucked up when they were live and we told them and they didn't fix it. That drives me more crazy. But on certain changes, I get frustrated. And I was telling some guys this morning on TIS public this. Sometimes they will not tell us things because they think they're doing us a favor. So that you guys have we know this is going to be unpopular, so we're not going to tell you about it ahead of time, so that you don't.
Please tell me that's not an actual thing,
dude. It's a real fucking thing.
Doesn't make any sense.
We want to give them we'll give you, and I'm like, guys, do not do that. Absolutely, do not do that. Because here's the thing: when you don't tell us in advance,
I think that's an excuse.
And what Seddow
that sounds like an excuse to me. Yeah,
I mean, it does sound like an excuse, but you don't tell us in advance, then everybody goes and says, well, "What's the point of the CSM? You guys are useless anyway." They don't tell you anything. If you tell us in advance and people say, "Oh, you're cheating because you knew ahead of time," I can say, "Go fuck yourself. That's not true," and I, prove it. But the criticism that if you're not telling us, that's legit because we can't do our jobs if we don't get the chance to provide the feedback before it goes live. Because maybe the reason why it's unpopular is because you fucked it up, and we can help you maybe fix that.
If they're just going to do that, then there's no reason for the CSM to exist.
That's my point.
If they're just going to drop changes like
that,
and
if they only come to you saying like,
CSM is
it
super
happens,
critical.
It's not common, but it happens.
And they just don't do it enough, and it makes everyone mad. And I think that it's something that has definitely gotten better, but it needs to continue to get better. Like you sign an NDA, like if you break, there's so much, especially like when Brisc, when you were accused of losing that can destroy your reputation in real life later down the road. If you were to break that, they should use it more because if anything, the 10 people who are elected are the ones who play the game and who have the most not pull, but know the most and are on the ground and hear from everyone. And it's something that, I wish didn't happen less, and I think it's getting better, but I'm not on the inside. And, that's sort of one of the reasons you're running. Everyone's running here to be on the inside and to be able to, even if they're ignoring you, to continue to push and push and push and be like, no, do this, do that. Like, here's our opinion on this and push them to do that. I know, Brisc, you always say a lot, yeah, I'm pushing them, and saying this. And I think you do. Like, that is what makes you a great CSM member. And I think you just need more people that are willing to push instead of just sit there and wait for them to come to you.
And to Ahmed's point, look, I wasn't saying prove it to you guys. I wasn't saying prove it to the players. I mean, the whole thing is if people think that CSM members are actively doing something wrong, they should absolutely send that information and say, guys, look, here's what I see. I don't like this. I think there's some stink here. Go investigate. It's not incumbent on CCP to prove it. They need to go and do the investigation. I mean, that's the problem that happened with me and Pando. They didn't do the fucking investigation. If they had done that and talked to us and spent 5 minutes investigating, they would have realized that this was all bullshit and they could have stopped from the beginning and none of that would have happened. That's the problem.
That was very satisfying, by the way, being on the right side of that drama.
I'm glad you were on the right side of that drama. I appreciate all the people.
Brisc, if you actually broke that NDA, Jesus, that's crazy. Like
how the fuck? I mean, seriously. I mean, this is guys. Listen, my name in Brisc Rubal is like an amalgamation of my real life name. You look it up on the internet, my real name and that name are all the time over there. There is no way that I'm going to do anything that absolutely ridiculous. So what? So Shines could sell his Moloch for a little bit more ISK? Come on, that's the dumbest shit. And that's the thing. Like
it was the dumbest accusation. It was so stupid. I can't believe. Well, that was like you said, that was the most frustrating thing. Is CCP just took it at face value, and I from what I understand, a lot has changed since then. That shouldn't be as much of an issue going forward. But
Correct.
Yeah, that was kind of funny when it was going all down, but I don't know. I don't want to rehash that too much anymore. It was a very disappointing
Me either.
moment in Eve history.
Well, I mean,
But
it
look,
was
it's still out of the
disappointing.
bridge. They fixed it. It's done. I'm not
But
worried about it.
how many people were also coming out saying they'll never revert those, even if they would realize it would, and they actually did. So at the end of the day,
I'm not gonna lie. I was impressed. They came back on it. I hate
If
to
you don't
bring
like
this up.
CCP, I'm the guy that got an apology out of them. Who the hell gets apologies out of this company? Come on.
I mean, actually, I don't hate to break this up. I think it was for another one that should have been reversed. I think it was absolutely ridiculous that GigX got banned. That was the stupidest fucking ban.
I wouldn't say the stupidest. So wait a second.
No.
He had something before, right?
You can find all kinds of examples of people saying ridiculous shit in much less situations. Like, I hate to say this, but like what just happened to GigX, that alliance that he built for 4 or 5 years, getting disbanded, and he got emotional? No shit, he got
agree
emotional.
with you there.
Are you fucking kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
and then they goddamn baited him into saying that on stream. That was unbelievable that CCP never came back on that. That was,
So,
you know.
I agree.
But yeah, Brisc, I was surprised you got an apology after that shit. Because if they never unbanned a GigX, I didn't think anyone was going to get unbanned.
Hey, I
People
agree.
are always going to say shit like that in this game because they take it emotionally, and like the fact that they crack down
See some
hard
of
on
the shit I get
GigX
from you.
because of who he was. But then, like, they have to, if they do that, then they have to uphold that standard to everyone, and they don't. Like, there was a Reddit thread today about something someone in Tissue said. Like, it happens all the time, and they just crack down on one guy instead of making it a policy that lasts for everyone.
Yeah, what I always said is like they always push that narrative of Eve is real.
It was clear, cover your ass shit,
Yeah.
just because it was so public and it was on Reddit.
Well, look,
I mean,
here is the
you
thing.
can find someone saying shit like that every day if you look for it.
I agree, and that's pretty common. I mean, here's the thing, and look, the GigX situation, I think obviously that was pretty public, and we saw what happened, and then nobody was happy with it. I think there was other stuff going on besides that. I don't think that was his first offense, to be honest. But I think here's the thing. This is what I have said from the beginning. The amount of time that people put into this game, the fact that, as Pando said, that they treat this as Eve is real. This is real life. It's a hobby. It's not a game. This is a lifestyle. You do this, and you're an Eve player, and that means something. Then I think they need to do a better job of doing investigations and determining whether or not somebody broke the rules, and then doing the punishments. And I told Hilmar to his face, I said, look, there needs to be some kind of an ombudsman, whether it's a player group or some players, or at least a dev that is divorced from the team security that goes in there and checks these guys' work and then confirms whether or not the ban if that's the correct punishment or what the correct punishment should be. And there should be an appeals process that you can go through and try to get your name cleared. Because all that stuff now is just you just submit a support ticket. And you hope that maybe a senior GM will take a look at it, and maybe they'll pass it on to somebody, and maybe they'll let you go. But there's nothing written in stone about it. And I mean, if this is going to be, and I hate to try to lawyer this up, but if you want to say Eve is real and you want to do that, then there has to be some kind of due process for people that can try to clear their name when they get accused or they get banned for some reason.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind Eve
being
guys that say
they didn't do it.
So, but to just finish on the GigX thing, I 100% agree with what you said, Proward, but he did have something in the past before. Like I was exactly of the same opinion, but then I heard that story about him actually saying he would have sent people to this other guy, and that's in the past, and he didn't get banned for that. He got a warning or something, and then this happened.
Okay.
Right? If you get a warning in the past, yes, you get emotional when your alliance get disbanded. Like, we all know how much fucking work we all put into this game. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. We're kind of dumb for doing it, to be quite honest, right?
No, we're very dumb. Don't get it twisted.
But if you get a warning before, you have to have that self-control to not fuck up again like this. Because if someone fucks up a second time like this, who knows? Someone with that little self-control, he might just do shit like that. So, it's just how it is. I don't know what's like exactly right. I don't know the full story behind like what's but there's more to it than just that one incident. So I guess the game has to live without GigX, and that's okay.
Didn't
should
you
we-
hear he's back under another account? You know.
Oh, I see. I
Yeah,
remember
I mean, at
poking
least
him
they didn't
saying
try too hard to. They didn't
That's
try
I'm
too
just
hard to
memeing about
block
that.
him. Yeah.
there was this appeal.
No, he was
process.
around after that. Yeah.
Yeah, there was this appeal
Oh, was he
process
really?
coming
That
up,
was a
and then
meme.
he showed up on some Discords. I think I actually poked him and said like, "Hey, you want to come on and talk about stuff?" But he never answered. I think maybe he doesn't like
Yeah,
me.
because if he makes his pace public, then he just gets banned again. You know. He would just
Well,
have to
that
lay
was
low
not.
and play.
So I invited him when CCP came out saying that like there's like changes to the appeal process. That's all, right? I just wanted to like talk to him, see if he still has interest in even coming back, right? Who knows? Maybe he got a happy life, and he's like, "Fuck Eve," right? But yeah.
Never know.
Alrighty, guys. Should we end it on this happy note?
Yeah.
Free
Not a bad
GigX.
spot.
All right. Then I would say thanks for coming on. I hope you
It was
guys
a blast.
make it on to the CSM. It's not gonna be easy, I think, this year. It's a little contested, I'd say, but yeah.
Tough year.
And
Brisc,
yeah.
would you run the numbers? It was like third most ever running or something.
I mean, this was now this has been the most running since CSM 12. Because a bunch of them didn't get qualified, it ended up being right about in the middle. But the numbers that I've seen, if you look back since CSM 11, CSM 11 had really shit numbers. CSM 12 was okay. CSM 13 was relatively low, but then from then every year it's gone up. So I expect the turnout will be around 39,000, 40,000 characters voting. That's a lot. And that means it's going to be hard. You're going to need like between 3,500, 3,600 and 4,000 votes to win. That's hard for anybody but the biggest groups to put together a coalition. So it's going to be hard. I think it's going to be tough. Plus, you have so many block candidates running this year. I mean, that's why I think Pando put out his post about the small guys, because, I mean, really, with this many block candidates running and this many blocks having candidates up, it's going to be pretty tough for some of those guys. And I'm nervous that folks that I like, that I've worked with, like Phantomite, are going to have a tough time getting elected this time, whereas last time it was a little bit easier for them. So we'll see. I mean, it's all going to come down to turnout.
When they release the voting numbers on that little Word document they release, I think it's going to be a lot more spread out and a lot more different than it has been in the past. I don't think you're going to see, what was it? I think last year it was like something like 8,000 votes immediately for Gobbins. If I remember right, that was like the first one who got elected out of like their little program that runs it. And I don't think you're going to see those numbers again. I think you're going to see people spread out a lot more this year and vote for different people. Of course, blocks will push their candidates, but I think that people this year, due to how many people are running, think shows like Pando, shows like the CCP interviews, shows like Astrati, and there's all these smaller to medium people running. I think that people might not listen to their blocks as much and vote on what they actually think. And maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong.
I think you're pretty wrong.
I might be wrong, but I think people might spread out.
So
it depends.
I think I'm just saying. I think people might spread out.
I've heard a lot of people say, "Hey, Brisc, I like you, even though I'm on the other side. I like you, so I'm going to vote for you." I'm like, "Great, thank you." But I mean, all right. So last year,
I wonder if any goons are going to vote for me.
We wanted you on the ballot.
I did. Darkshines did reach out to me, and I'm happy to accommodate that.
So in terms of the numbers, last time Merkel Chen had 5,300 votes to start. He had the most. Gobbins was number 2 with 3,700. Billy had 2,789, and Maria Taylor had 2,556. I was in 5th place with 1,794. You needed 3,284 at the start to get in there. So, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I keep telling everybody, the big blocks can get on one person, maybe 2 reliably, if they're working together.
I don't know if I'm going to get on, because we're going to make sure we get Billy on.
Test has a lot of people this year. You have, what, 3 or 4?
Oh, well, we're only putting 2 at the top of the ballot, me and Billy. I'm not expecting to get on, to be honest. We're going to get Billy on for sure, and then we're just going to see what happens with me. I did it last second anyway. You know, We'll see what
So-
goes. I'm not gonna get all beat up about
Oh
it.
God, here's the thing: if you don't get on this time, go next time because Billy's term limited anyway. So you'd be the
Yeah,
guy.
well,
right?
so that was always the plan, right? And then I just kind of said "fuck it" at the last second.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
But
It's not
think
going
I
to
yeah,
get
hurt
on
you
either,
having
but
another
I
campaign
will
under your
try.
belt before you run next time. I think
Yeah.
that'll be fine.
About what Seddow just said, like there's gonna be more like spread out voting. I think you couldn't be more wrong. I think especially now with the war going on, a lot of people are gonna be like having this, what I said in the Reddit post, it's like a false sense of pride. Their guys, like we want to see our guys on the top, right? It's like a competition. They don't give a shit what the guys
That's
have to
what I worry
say
about.
or whatever. Like they want their ballot to be fucking on top, and they want the most CSM guys. And that's what's, I think that's gonna show. I think that's really gonna show, and that's why I made this Reddit post saying, "Hey guys, make sure we've got like a wormholer and a small scaler on there, right? Like some independent guys. Make sure we've got at least one or two, right? So we, for example, the Cloaky changes. We talked about that. We need someone in the room who knows about the hunting stuff. There's nobody in that room who hunts, right? Yeah, but of course, like someone is going to claim, oh yeah, I hunted like 5 years ago. But like generally, nobody's spending on the CSM, spending hours sitting around looking for the target, watching a certain system to wait for that signer to log in, who's like moving a time, all that stuff, right? So we need some other people, playstyle diverse CSM. That's what we need, I think. So I hope at least one or two of them get on. But yeah, obviously also I think
Two of them always tend to get on. I'm hoping. I talked to Mark and I talked to Teddy and some of the wormhole guys, and I'm hoping that maybe the wormholers have figured out and gotten their shit together.
Right.
And they'll put a ballot and actually get everybody on it, and not like pick one or two.
yeah. To a message to the smaller non-nullsec group spots of Eve. We can't help you if you guys can't agree. So if the nullsec guys just
Tell
out
us what you
organized
want.
it, too
Come
bad.
and ask. Come ask.
Yeah, too
Yeah.
bad.
When we hear nothing from any of these small guys to the
think,
guys that are doing the ballots for the big groups, it's like, guys, just ask. We're not going to say fuck you. Just ask us.
Yeah.
The worst we can say is no.
I
year.
offered a spot on the test ballot, a high spot on the test ballot to a low sec person the other day. So yeah, it is definitely we're the nullsec alliances. I know we catch a lot of shit, but we want to play a good game just like the rest of you. So
I think this year
That's
ended
a
up
good point.
different in terms of people running a lot different than people expected. Was there any like official like I know that uh like the fraternity guy who put up and someone like Squishy, did they just get denied through the process?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'd never heard if there was an official word on it or what.
They've all been notified, but we don't. Obviously, wasn't made public. But I mean, that's
Yeah,
something I want to fix anyway. I think the way the process works is stupid. You put your post up first, and then you're told whether it's okay to run. It's just asking to embarrass people. Like tell them that they can run first, and then tell them to put a post up. That makes more sense than anything else. And maybe a little more work on their end, but fuck that. They're getting paid. They can do the work.
All right. Then, guys, I would say it's 2 hours. So let's cut it right here. And
Thank you, Pando. I would just like to say for the record, I love the fact that ProGod has white in his beard now. I don't feel so alone.
yeah, no. So Briss, towards the beginning of the show, I think someone said that ProGod looks like he's halfway to being Brisc already.
Oh, there you go. I like it.
Yeah. And to the Goonies out there who are so frustrated that we said we're gonna destroy your alliance or remove your alliance. Don't take it so personally. I know you guys keep saying surrender alliance. We're not out there to destroy the game. We're just out there to destroy your game. And I just want you to
Exactly. There you go.
Don't do that. You guys did say it, but hey.
Yeah.
All right, let's get it right here, guys. Thanks everyone
clip that, by the way.
for hanging out. Yeah. Thanks for the host from Mind One. Thanks for the subs and all that stuff. And whoever is the fastest, have fun with the skin. And see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.
I mean,